When you think of some of the most iconic scenes in movies, what comes to mind? There's too many to choose from with a question that broad, so let's just focus on one genre instead. When you hear the word Western, images of cowboys riding on horses or a duel at high noon are likely some of the first thoughts you have, and while every genre has its cliches, the typical Western showcases its tropes with pride. Now, of course, these stereotypical ideals come from real history and folklore, which found its way into film when directors looked for places to derive ideas from. Movies like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Fistful of Dollars, Once Upon a Time in the West, and of course Back to the Future, which takes more from other movies for its Wild West influence and historical reference. Westerns are very much stuck within the limits of its setting and realism, so although the genre may seem very surface level at best, it's actually very versatile in the long run. There's lots of wiggle room for an original story while still working in the tropes. Now, the cliches are of course not a requirement, but in the world of film, it's what audiences have come to expect, and perhaps even want to see from a Western. So when an aspiring director sets out to create a film in this genre, you could expect to see the usual scenes. With a genre that has so many iconic aspects and flexibility, it's no surprise that it bled into the world of Blockland filmmaking. There's a very small presence of Wild West films in the Blockland film catalog, however, yet the handful of videos we have to work with follow the Western tropes very closely. Let's check out a couple videos provided to us by SuperDrew25 and NTB Santo. Starting with the latter first, this is NTB Santo's Blockland Western. Looking at the description, we learn that this is only a trailer for what would have been a much bigger film. Right off the bat, we're put in the middle of a face-off between two unnamed characters. They stand in the middle of a small desert town staring one another down, ready to draw. The music is exactly as you'd expect too, including a violin and someone whistling. For such a short video, it still takes the most stereotypical parts of a Western film, being the standoff, and makes it the sole focus of the video. One of the cowboys even looks up from under the brim of his hat as it covers his eyes, which a lot of Western-based characters are prone to do. When it comes to this video in particular though, its length doesn't allow for it to expand on the genre and relies on what you would expect to see, even including smaller tropes on top of that. For what it's worth though, the trailer is actually very promising and makes me wish that the full-length film was actually created. For the lack of Westerns made within Blockland, it could have been a great addition. Let's move on to a lengthier film.
This is Blockland Wild West Classic by SuperDrew25.
Hi, so I just want to clarify something with you right now. I wrote this script months ago, and between that time and now, SuperDrew deleted his channel, which means that every single video from that channel is gone forever because none of it is archived anywhere. So the following footage is actually a recreation of the video from memory, while also giving the same commentary that I would have if I did have the original footage. So I just want to make that clear, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the video. Let's move on to a lengthier film. This is Blockland Wild West Classic by SuperDrew25. Compared to the last film, we have a little more substance. The director took more liberties, but still attempts to include what we've learned to be commonplace at this point. Surprisingly though, this is the only video to lack a high noon duel. The only thing close to it is who I'm assuming to be someone of the law gunning down a wanted criminal. In fact, there's 10 times the amount of shooting in this video compared to the previous one from NTB Santo. This time around we follow an outlaw named Billy the Kid, according to the description, who rides alone in a covered wagon to a store. When the owner refuses to meet his demands for money, Billy uses a very extreme method to finish off this local business. What I found while watching this is how loosely it follows its own plot, seemingly improvised as it goes on, and this is most evident when the carriage Billy was riding in disappears before he can jump into it, and then it moves right into a scene where he kills clones of himself. Regardless of these deviancies though, everything follows the idea of a Western as much as it sets out to do. Robbing a store, riding off into the desert, an outlaw caught by a sheriff. It may be a bit strange and messy, but it's still a Western at heart. I also want to mention a video by Pablo simply titled Pablo's Western. It follows a lot of the same ideas from the two previous films. It starts with a man, that being Pablo, riding in on a horse to a saloon situated in the middle of the desert. The biggest difference here is that chaos erupts rather quickly as Pablo begins to shoot wildly. The pianist dies while playing the entertainer, a keg of alcohol leaks into the middle of the saloon, and a chandelier falls, causing the entire building to be set aflame. This is more so a video created with friends just for the fun of it, rather than being a planned story, but it follows the hallmarks nonetheless. Now, this made me think. Although you can point out these cliches from how noticeable they are from across the board, can their influence on westerns find their way outside of the genre they came from? Well, to help answer this, I contacted a Wild West expert and friend, Mr. Annoying.
Hello and welcome to CineBlock, a Blockland video review show. My name is Mr. Annoying. I'm joining Big to talk about what makes a western story. What does a western require? Well, it isn't just 6 shooters and a Stetson Bedecked protagonist to wield them. The core of the genre is the very spirit that encapsulated the Old West: fearlessness, bravery, and self-reliance. All great westerns are about characters who face their problems head-on and don't rely on bigger and stronger forces to do it for them. Setting and to some extent time period aren't exactly what makes a western story. In a medium like Blockland that allows you to create your own sets and import tools and costumes in, these guidelines are free to bend to the filmmaker's wishes. Take for instance Felipe 1020's Mexican Stories, a story that some of you may know I'm well acquainted with, if you've seen the review of it on my channel. This is a short film set in the modern day about a foreigner, or a gringo, being put into a gang conflict in search of a stolen fortune at the hands of an outlaw. But once our hero compromises their mission, they have a final stand to none other than the Good, the Bad, and the Uglies theme song, being the unofficial theme song of anything to do with the Wild West, and the literal theme song of one of the most popular western films in history. It's interesting to note that this video itself draws some parallels to the original film. Both star an American protagonist who is subjected to helping a ruthless Mexican criminal in search of a fortune. Another Blockland film that draws a lot of parallels to classic Hollywood cinema is Block Eye Entertainment's Time Warp, the story of a modern-day thief who accidentally travels back in time to the Wild West using an ancient artifact and redeems himself through facing off with a gang of outlaws. Despite the glaringly obvious similarities to the third Back to the Future film, where Marty McFly also travels back in time and lives out a real-life western, the film actually does a lot to try and remain faithful to the genre otherwise. Our hero has a mission to get back home, and he meets a partner on a mission to keep his family safe from a gang of bandits. Once they realize the artifact could be worth millions, they give it to the bandits to satisfy them, only until they realize the ramifications of this would be far worse than the price of getting it back. Everything about this is characteristic of a cheesy western film, from the shootouts in the saloon, to the hero riding a horse to chase a train, to the final fight coming down to a quick draw duel, and everyone in the town has a southern accent and wears a cowboy hat. It really is a love letter to all the tropes we've come to expect from a western story. And let me tell you something, Baked. It makes me wish we got to this video first on BrickFlix.
What?
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, please excuse me for not mentioning this sooner. I'm the proud host of BrickFlix, the Blockland video review show, where we invite guests in to discuss any and all types of Blockland films. And speaking about tropes, hats off to Slicerman 10 for paving the way in the first place with his feature film, Western Large. Made in 2009, this is a very early Blockland movie in general, and the very first Western attempt. The story is pretty loose, but I thought an outlaw was trying to intercept an oncoming train and got caught up in a shootout. The video quality is pretty rough, but at the end of the day, Blockland filmmaking was a frontier in its own way. A nice coincidence if I do say so myself.
Okay, well thank you, Mr. Annoying. I think we've covered everything. That's all the time we've got. Be sure to join us next...
by the way, if you want to come on BrickFlix to review a film, just leave a comment.
Okay, hold on. Cut. Okay, hey, listen, man. I appreciate you coming onto the show and everything, but you're plugging BrickFlix way too damn hard, okay? We agreed to do promotions at the end, so let's try to keep it that way, alright? I never have to cut in the middle of an episode like this, and this is far from a good reason to do so.
Whoa there, Scorsese. You don't get Puritan with me. This is show business. You gotta do what you gotta do.
I gave you a warm welcome into the show, and this is how you're gonna act?
Oh, your majesty's the only one who gets the limelight now? Too good for a little cross-promotion? Get real. The rest of us need to make a living too, you know.
We could have saved the promotions for after my nice little roundup of everything. The entire flow of the episode is ruined.
After the roundup? Oh, you mean the part of the video that everyone clicks off of before the other videos pop up? I guess you should just put my face on a doormat, cause you'd be keeping your shoes clean while walking all over me.
What is your problem?
Hey, you called me on this episode, and you're agreeing to my terms.
What happened
and
to
in the contract, I clearly stated at least 3 minutes of
this was in
screen
the
time.
contract, and you know I have
I
the world's best
specifically
lawyers
regretted
on my
soft
beck
lighting.
and
I made it
call.
very apparent that hard lighting doesn't complement my natural complexion.
And
Well, you
avoid
didn't
paying
include the
all
body
of my
validation either, so that's another 12 bucks down the drain. Not to mention Mr. Big Shot Hollywood can't even put brand name cola on the refreshment table. Alright, enough! We're at an impasse. There's only one way to handle this.
You shouldn't come to a duel unless you brought your own gun. And you shouldn't take another man's gun unless you know it's loaded. Hey, thanks for watching this episode of CineBlock. Be careful out there, you never know when a Wild West expert might come along and have some not so good intentions. Good night!